Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. So I went over the could Charlie have been electrocuted theory that Baron Coleman presented. And you guys have had some interesting questions about my rebuttal to some of it. And I know that Harsh also did a video this morning that he also agrees that it's probably not plausible. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. When I was doing the live reaction, I didn't have the time to do some of the research and show some of the things that I wanted to show. So I'm going to do that today. So this is kind of like part two. So let's get into it. The first thing I will go over is the freckles or the moles or the insinuated puncture wounds or maybe in and out exit wounds from electrocution that are on his forearm. You have these two puncture looking wounds here. Okay. I went and I got every picture that showed more of his moles and his freckles. And this one obviously is a little bit darker and he has hair in his arm, so it's hard to see. But I went and I grabbed a bunch of these. This one, you can actually see them. And like I said, I went and got several from that day, that same exact day. You know, you can see them there as well. And now remember, he has hair in his arm. So you can see it there as well. He has several that are on his arm. So I took those. And I am 99% certain that those are not. They're just freckles. So I put it into Grok. So I put it into our buddy Grok, and I analyzed it. And initially, you know, basically he's doing all the measurements, right? Like this one's in this location by the elbow, and there's 2 to 3 by the wrist, and all that kind of stuff, right? So it kind of creates like a profile. And then it talks about the blood and different things, right? I know that's really important. It goes in here, and this basically catalogs all the different moles in the location. And after it has that profile, then I asked it again. I said, compare all of that. I said, in this photo, there claims to be 2 dark spots on the arm are from electrocution or puncture wounds consistent with the moles or freckles in previous images as well. So basically I'm saying, like, does this picture match the profile of the freckles and or moles that you saw in the other pictures? So it analyzed that photo again and recompared it just to make sure. And it did all the measurements again. And new photo scrutiny. The arm is extended. Spots are visible without obstruction. No swelling, redness, or blistering indicative of burns or punctures. And the key checks. Position, shape, color, and multiplicity matched against 5+ reference images. Accounted for angles, partial side views, and potential post-event changes, medical, that kind of stuff. So based on everything that it came up with, it says, yes, the 2 dark spots are fully consistent with Charlie Kirk's established moles freckles from prior images. They are the same markings, no evidence of electrocution or puncture wounds. Conspiracy claims likely stem from low-res shares or misattribution, but high-detail analysis shows no anomalies. Skin appears healthy with no forensic signs of trauma. Okay, so again, like I said in the images I've shown, and a lot of you are saying, there's no way, they're slightly 1% off in the distance between them or whatever. Well, you have to account for several things. In one picture, it's up close, or very zoomed in the dark, and his arm is down. And the other one, his arm is hanging in bright sunlight in a low-resolution photo. So, and it's from a distance, right? Because he's zoomed way out when he's taking that picture. But according to this, and I still stand to it, it's just freckles or moles. All right, so let's move on. And then many of you were asking about the feedback. Was the feedback what electrocuted him? No, audio feedback itself does not indicate more potential voltage for electrocution. Audio feedback is an acoustic phenomenon caused by the microphone picking up amplified sound and then looping it, right? So it's the lack of being grounded in the system that causes the voltage that can electrocute you. And in his system, he had an SM58 microphone, which is a very common Shure, and it is hooked up through an XLR, and the XLR itself is supposed to be grounded. And then the actual grounding is part of the hood or the grill that's on the microphone that's screwed onto it as well. And most people, when they get shocked, is when they touch it to their lips. But there are some cases where they grab the actual metal body of it and get shocked as well. And typically there has to be a grounding issue within the unit that it's plugged into or into the cable itself. So let's look at that. So typically you would have a system somewhat like this. So Charlie would be having this mic, and he doesn't have this stand typically, right? But the audience does. And then he's going to have this microphone going directly into a mixer in most cases, but some cases they also have a stage box. And this just takes all the signals, and then you can reroute them to wherever you want them to go. So some go to amplifiers, some go to the mixer, and some go to the effects. The effects are metal racks that are bolted into a box, and they do things like compression, gates, EQ, and they make it sound better, right? And then those have signals that go out to the loudspeaker. Now, the voltage system going through the regular microphone is typically low voltage, right, for a microphone. For the speakers, they need significantly more power, and they tend to be high voltage. These systems don't tend to cross into each other. And a lot of times, the speakers themselves have their own power. They're just receiving an audio signal into them, and then they are plugged into their own circuit and powered that way. Now, there are some passive speakers, but they're nowhere near as loud and usually not powerful enough. So let's focus on the low voltage system that would be going to Charlie. So in that system, in some cases, in some of these shocks, the stand itself is what actually grounds the whole system. And then when the performer comes up and touches the mic, usually with their lips, but sometimes also just the metal grill on the mic itself, then they get a shock. And I'll show you a few, and this is a graphic warning. These people don't die, and they don't get like completely fried that you can visually see or anything like that. But just seeing someone get electrocuted for some people can be a little alarming. So let's go ahead and look at that really quick. For this one is pretty tame. Okay, now you saw he just went, touched, and got a little shock on his lip, right? Not too bad. So in this case, the mic wasn't grounded, and he just got a tiny little shock. Now, would it have been different if he completely put his lips on it or if he grabbed it with his hand? I don't know. Now let's look at this next one. So here's Dustin Thomas, and you'll see when he gets hit, he definitely, I mean, it hits him pretty hard, but you don't see him like completely tense up or, you know, have charred hands and feet and all that kind of stuff. So check this out. So you can see he definitely got hit pretty hard. And I don't know what happened after this. I don't know if he was definitely confused and that kind of stuff, but I don't know if he had like heart arrhythmias or anything, which is the most typical thing that messes with people or can possibly kill them from these type of low voltage shocks. But this one here, this one is much more disturbing. And she's fine. She survived and everything. But you'll see she has more of the typical reaction. She grabs the microphone and she can't let go of it, right? So even though her entire body is moving away from it and she's trying to get it out of her hand and let go of it, she can't. And I assume they either unplugged the mic or turned the power off or unplugged it or something, but you'll see. Okay, so you can see there, she grabs the mic. It starts to shock her. She can't let go of it. Her hand is completely clamped and locked. Not her whole body, just her hand, right? And then as she's moving away, she's trying to rip it out with her other hand. And then when she grabs it with her other hand, she gets shocked again and can't let go of it. And then finally, she falls down and it's out of her hand. So that is kind of more what you would expect, the reaction you would see if someone was shocked from a microphone that's low voltage. Charlie, seizing up and blood squirting out of his neck and people saying he's burnt and all this kind of stuff, that would be typical for high voltage. And these aren't high voltage systems. Could it be wired that way if for nefarious reasons? Possibly, but not very likely. So this goes to show you that when people get electrocuted from the microphone, it is not a super dramatic looking event and you don't see burns on them and that kind of stuff. They just look like they got kind of confused or locked up for a second. In her case, it probably felt like a stinging or burning on her hand. And that's why she was trying to get away from it and pull it out of her hand, right? In this case, it didn't seem to go through her whole body like you would expect and make her kind of tense up or whatever. So very strange behavior based on what it looks like when it actually happens. But this doesn't really fit what we saw with Charlie. And just real quick for the other point I was talking about, I had said, why don't shoes ground people with rubber soles? And it says that they don't guarantee safety from shock when holding a microphone because you can still complete a circuit with another body part or if the floor is wet. Charlie Kirk hit his feet on water bottles, some people are saying, and he was on a raised platform and on a chair, and there was water around him. But as far as like him being, standing in water and being in a live circuit, I don't think that's the case. And I did some research into can those water bottles conduct electricity, and the plastic itself is an insulator. So there's a very, 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 very small chance that he would actually be able to conduct electricity through the water bottles. So I don't think that that is necessarily a thing to be concerned about. But it does say, very interestingly, if you can get grounded if you touch a grounded object like the mic stand. So we know that the previous examples that we saw, they got shocked while the mic was on a mic stand. But Charlie didn't use a mic stand, but he was sitting in a chair on a raised platform. Could that have acted as like a mic stand? Could that have grounded him? Possibly. But there's a lot of other things that negate based on the way that he reacted, based on his other injuries, his vertebrae, the blood squirting out of his neck in that, kind of dramatic fashion. There are a lot of other things like cavitation. They don't support the fact that he was electrocuted by a low voltage, right? High voltage can do all kinds of crazy stuff. If you look at the pictures, I can't show them here. They're extremely graphic, but splits open body parts, completely fries off legs and that kind of stuff. These low voltage systems don't do that typically, right? So let's go ahead and get to the next piece.
The instrument or the microphone in your hand is a direct connection from your body to the chassis of that equipment. The grill of your microphone is also connected to the ground pin of your XLR microphone cable, which connects then to the chassis of the microphone preamp. Because the voltages that are being applied to your body from that amplifier are relatively low, you may never notice this happening. However, if you're touching the equipment and a grounded surface simultaneously, you will definitely notice.
So basically what he's saying there is that the equipment is what grounds you. So if you have the microphone, in this case, that Charlie had, and I don't know if he had a stage box or not, but that would go into the mixer, and the mixer itself should be grounded through its triple pin connection. And one of the pins is the ground. It goes into the ground of the electric system. So that should keep you safe, right? So if you have a properly grounded XLR, which is like this type of connection here, there's a male and female end. You're going to have your pin 1, which is your ground, right? And this is the one that if there's something wrong with that, then that could theoretically be what could cause you to get shocked. And then you have pin 2, which is your power. That's your hot lead. And then you have pin 3, which is your negative. So if something's wrong with pin 1, the grounded one, or in the case that your mixer itself is not properly grounded, for whatever reason it may be, then you run into a situation where, there could be some voltage. And typically it's going to be low voltage, and it can cause problems. But typically it doesn't cause these severe burns and things, and huge exit wounds and stuff that people are insinuating. One way you can run into issues is if you have a triple connector like this for the plug, and then you put it into a triple to a double, because then you lose the grounding. Now, would they do that at a live event outdoors that they've done hundreds of times before? Probably not, but that could be a possibility. I wanted to keep this video short and sweet since my last one was pretty long, but this kind of goes to show you that can there be issues in these systems? Yes, I mean, we saw videos that prove 100% that you can be electrocuted. There are a lot of cases of musicians and even guitarists, for example, playing their guitar that get shocked to death from these systems. Now, typically when that happens, it is low voltage, and it's the arrhythmias that are induced by the shock that causes the death, not frying of their body or burning their hands or having huge exit wounds come out of their neck and stuff like that, right? So it does happen, but it's not a common thing. And it's probably something that if this did happen to Charlie, we would see something much different. We would have seen him maybe seize up a little bit, and he probably wouldn't be instantly killed. In a lot of these cases, these people, you see their reactions. They kind of like get hit, and then they have a little bit of confusion, or maybe they're having some temporary arrhythmias or something. Or like in the case with the model that went up, and she grabs the mic and she's freaking out. She's fully functional, freaking out, trying to rip it out of her hand because it's like burning or stinging her hand, right? So that's more what we would have expected to see if Charlie had gotten electrocuted by his microphone. Now, if it was high voltage, you could have seen something as insane as, his head exploding, for example, right? Or seeing him real time get burned and charred down his arm, right? It would be very dramatic. So I still don't think that there's much plausibility to the theory, but I still think it's interesting for sure. I'm interested to hear your thoughts because you guys have had a lot of great questions, and hopefully I addressed the ones that you had here today. But put it down in the comments. What do you think? Do you think this is still plausible? And if this is plausible, how do you think that they executed this? And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this around. And you can find ways to support the channel down in the description. See you on the next one.